Let's get to that. President Trump met with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney on Monday during the G7 summit. The two leaders reportedly committed to pursuing a trade deal within the next month.
Prime Minister Mark Carney sending a clear and strong message to his country and to the White House as he prepares to lead his nation through a trade war that his country did not ask for.
Wants our land, our resources, our water, our country. Never. But these are not idle threats. President Trump is trying to break us so that America can own us. That will never, ever happen.
It began with a handshake in front of cameras. President Donald Trump and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney at the G7 summit, announcing their intention to pursue a trade deal within a month. But what followed that carefully choreographed moment was a diplomatic breakdown few saw coming. While Trump spoke of progress, governors across the northeastern United States were already bracing for economic fallout. The warning signs weren't confined to government offices. They appeared in empty hotels, vacant restaurants, shuttered storefronts, and on highways that had, until recently, carried tens of thousands of Canadian tourists every month. Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey had seen enough. "I thought it was important to get a group of us together," she said. "So I invited Governor Hochul from New York and the other New England governors to meet with Canadian premiers in Boston the other day to talk about how we can move forward with our own relationships, our own partnerships around trade, around energy supply, around tourism, for example." As Trump escalated tariffs on Canadian goods, raising them to 25% on energy, lumber, and aluminum, Healey called an emergency meeting. Not in Washington, not with diplomats, but in Boston with governors, premiers, and the people actually feeling the economic pain. Before we continue, hit that like button to help us beat the YouTube algorithm and to show your support. The gathering was unprecedented. Governors from across New England, New York, Vermont, Maine, New Hampshire, Connecticut sat across from Canadian provincial leaders. No cameras, no fanfare, just the urgent question: how do we protect our local economies while the federal government drags us into a trade war with our closest ally? "Canada is our biggest trading partner," Healey said bluntly, "and Trump is taxing our states like they're the enemy." Her tone was calm. The data was not. Massachusetts had already seen a 20 to 60% drop in Canadian tourism, and it was only June. Hotels were reporting record cancellations. Flights from Canada into Boston's Logan International Airport were plummeting. Canadian homeowners in Florida were fleeing the state. Some of the wealthiest tourists in North America were voting with their wallets. The impact wasn't theoretical. It was personal. And it was devastating. Before we continue, hit that subscribe button to show your support for the channel. "This isn't just about politics," Healey said. "It's about workers, families, business owners getting laid off because Canadians are canceling trips, pulling out of seasonal homes, and avoiding our cities entirely." And they were. In Old Orchard Beach, Maine, a town just 150 miles from the Canadian border, Sterling Morse stood inside the Point of View Inn, staring at his empty reservation book. The Canadian side was gone. Morse had been welcoming French-Canadian families for decades. The same families, same weeks, same rooms. Not this year. "We're down 90%, Morse said. "They're angry. And they're not coming." He pulled out a box of last year's registration cards, nearly all with Canadian flags. Then he held up this year's stack. Empty. "This doesn't pay the bills," he said quietly. "This doesn't work." The trigger wasn't hard to find. Trump had repeatedly mocked Canadian leadership. He called Prime Minister Carney a glorified governor, joked about making Canada the 51st state, and insisted that Canadians had been ripping us off for decades. For people like Gary and Carol Cruz, snowbirds who had visited the U.S. 5 months a year for over a decade, the shift was emotional. "We love America," Gary said. "We've spent over $30,000 a year on U.S. vacations. But this, it feels like a gut punch from a best friend." The Cruzes had canceled 2 trips to Disney that year alone. Their RV, normally parked somewhere between Florida and Arizona by spring, would now stay in Ontario. "We used to look for Made in the USA labels," Carol said. "Now, if we see that, we put it back on the shelf." And they weren't alone. State tourism boards in Florida, New York, California, and Illinois were launching targeted ad campaigns, begging Canadians to return. One California ad pleaded, "Please visit. We're not Trump. Another showed peaceful coastal towns with a caption, "We're still your neighbors." But Canadians weren't buying it. Because even if a destination was politically welcoming, crossing the border still meant entering Trump's America. It meant passports, flags, questions, and for many, that was reason enough to stay home. Back in Massachusetts, Healy was tallying the broader impact. Lumber tariffs had raised construction costs so dramatically that affordable housing projects across the state were freezing in place. "We get almost all of our lumber from Canada," Governor Healy explained. "Now we're paying more to build fewer homes. The math doesn't work." Aluminum tariffs hit another industry hard, beer. Massachusetts has one of the largest craft brewing sectors in the country. Every can? Canadian aluminum. "We're seeing layoffs," Healy said. "We're seeing production slowdowns. We're seeing good businesses get punished for a trade war they didn't ask for." Then came energy. Trump's tariffs on Canadian natural gas and electricity imports were projected to raise heating and utility costs across New England by $2.5 billion over the next 5 years. "That's a tax," Healy said. "A Trump tax on working people." And it wasn't just Democrats saying it. Republican governors from border states were seeing the same thing. Lost tourism, increased energy costs, falling housing starts, rural hospitals shuttering, and it was all hitting faster than anyone had predicted. In Boston, Healy laid out what she called a regional response. Governors would pursue energy partnerships with Canadian provinces directly. They would negotiate cross-border tourism packages, explore rail link projects, and seek waivers for critical infrastructure materials like lumber and aluminum. "If Trump can't get it together with Carney," she said, "then we will." But that didn't stop the damage already underway. The Massachusetts hospitality industry had taken a direct hit. Wait staff, bartenders, housekeepers, all facing reduced hours and layoffs. The ripple effect was massive. Supply chains disrupted. Beverage distributors reporting unsellable stock. Craft beer cans stacking up in warehouses. And all of it tied to tariffs. For every politician offering a press conference, there were real people losing their livelihoods. Even the Chamber of Commerce in Old Orchard Beach admitted that Canadian tourists made up 30 to 40% of annual revenue for dozens of local businesses. "This doesn't just affect tourism," the director said. "It affects food service, retail, real estate, auto sales. It's systemic." Meanwhile, Trump was silent. No clarifying message. No signal of a walk back. No diplomatic outreach. Instead, governors were left trying to do the work of federal diplomacy, while their residents suffered the consequences. In one of the most bizarre turns, Trump's only public remark in response to the economic fallout was to mock European leaders for begging for gas and to insist that his tariff war was winning. But the numbers told a different story. French President Emmanuel Macron, fresh from a visit with Chinese President Xi Jinping, had already begun pivoting. In the wake of Trump's tariff blitz, Macron accelerated French energy contracts with Beijing, signed 18 bilateral agreements across agriculture, aviation, and infrastructure, and called for strategic economic independence from the United States. It was a move that alarmed economists across the Atlantic. Because if France follows through, and if other European countries follow France, then Trump's tariff war won't just cost him Canadian tourists. It could trigger a long-term collapse in U.S. trade dominance. And the people feeling it first. They're not lobbyists in Washington. They're hotel owners in Maine, restaurant servers in Cape Cod, beer distributors in Vermont, tour guides in Montreal, and snowbirds who, after decades of spending winters in America, are suddenly canceling everything. "We're not trying to pick a fight," Gary Cruz said. "We just don't want to be insulted. We don't want to be taxed like criminals. We just want to visit a country we used to call our second home." At that Boston summit, one message came through louder than any other, from governors, from premiers, from ordinary citizens on both sides of the border. Enough is enough. The Northeast is not waiting for Trump to fix the damage. They are building new bridges, literal and political, with Canadian allies. And they are making it clear, if Washington cannot lead, the states will. Because in the silence left by tariffs, someone has to.